anybody have questions? Yeah.
A lot of your presentation seemed to address urban type environments. We live in a suburb. I chose to live in a suburb for a particular reason. Although I totally support the idea of public transportation and things like that, but how does that really get adapted to a more suburban environment where you're not going to build some Grand Central Station type thing, and we're not going to have
You can still have your
types
town
of-
centers and really create, just connect your urban centers with some of the like your library. Just if you've got public transportation that comes out here, if you can live near the library and get a bus into town or to the town center, that sort of thing is part of it. And it's not just inter-city, but intra-city as well. So it's about connecting Lorraine with Cleveland. So you don't have to get in your car and drive 40 minutes to get downtown if you want to go. You can hop on a train and be there in an hour. Not have to own a car to get there. Transportation is, we're truly looking at it, and part of the reason we decided to focus on 7 counties for our climate project is because transportation is such a huge part of it, and it has to be something regional. I have a brother that commutes to Akron. How do we fix that? How do we get him out of the car for an hour, 2 hours every day, an hour there and an hour back? And there's ways, I know that a lot of people move to the suburbs because it's safe, but these communities with cul-de-sacs and turnarounds, that kind of planning, you get in a car and go a mile, and as the crow flies, you could get a lot further in a mile and save a lot of energy, save a lot of gas. So planning on like a grid is another way about it. So future developments, how those are planned is part of it. These windy cul-de-sac developments. There's, I wish I had brought the slide. There was a study in Seattle where they did a grid, and they took a central point, and it was on a grid basis, the neighborhood, and determined how far you could go in a quarter mile. And then they did the same thing with the sort of your traditional suburbia. My parents live in one. Every other road's a cul-de-sac, and you couldn't get anywhere really in that same quarter mile. So thinking about that sort of thing will also help reduce vehicle miles traveled. I mean, it's not just about the number of people riding buses. It's about how many miles per person you drive in a year. That can really make a difference, especially if we're thinking about this in terms of carbon emissions, greenhouse gases, energy savings, and that sort of thing. Yes, sir.
How can we make public transportation more affordable? I mean, my 2 sons and myself, when I go down to the ball game, it's cheaper for me to drive and park than it is to take RTA.
I think a lot of...
And more convenient.
I know that. I live in Cleveland, and taking the bus is a chore. It actually takes me longer, quite often. It really has to do with the volume of your public transportation makes a big difference. People need to use it. There needs to be a larger demand. As that demand increases, hopefully the prices will go down. We have such limited public transportation in Cleveland that it isn't convenient and it's not easy, and only those people who absolutely rely on it and need it tend to use it. And I think that's part of the problem we have in our part of the state. Also, we don't really pay the true costs for driving your car. You go to New York City, you're paying $100 or more a month to park your car. It's expensive. So it's easier not to have a car and ride the transit. And I know that is an extreme, but increasing that demand, making it more convenient, it will help kind of reduce the costs. But I understand what you're saying. And building it in a way where more people can use it, that transit-oriented development will also help.
New York City, you can get from point A to point B without walking. You can catch a cab or a bus or other transportation anywhere.
I
That
know.
doesn't happen here.
No.
And
Try riding the bus in Cleveland on a Saturday, you're like 45 minutes waiting.
expecting people to walk and bicycle, not realistic. People are lazy. I am.
But that's why we need
And
to
as long as we
change
don't
that.
allow electric vehicles, electric bikes or segways and that kind of stuff, as long as they're banned on the highway, and they are, or on public right-of-ways, that first mile or two to the public transportation and from the public transportation involves walking, and people just aren't going to do that. Yeah, I'm not.
But again, I mean, this isn't something that happens overnight. Transportation planning, transportation changes is a long-term plan, and you need to start thinking about it in the right way now. Because if we really were to pay the true cost of driving, all those externalities that we don't really think about, health costs, our taxes, all that, it's really a lot more expensive than we think it is. And if we were to pay that true cost, public transportation might be a little bit more appealing if it were an option. And in the long term, it really needs to be an
But you said it
option.
yourself, it's unrealistic to expect people not to have the cars, so we're going to have them, we're going to have the roads anyway.
But to move them towards, a lot of people, I mean, Cleveland actually saw an increase in people moving downtown because the cost of living was just getting so expensive in the suburbs. So urban living is becoming more appealing because it is a little bit cheaper now. Trying to find a grocery store downtown is difficult. So there's land use planning and transportation planning very much have to be one and the same. And we're trying to get, our regional planning, our metropolitan planning organizations to start thinking in that way and kind of breaking from the trend, not going with the status quo, but having a vision, a strategic vision, and working towards that, and not base it on the trends of the time. We need to change those trends, and how do you change them? How do you make that happen? Yes, sir.
Well, I think that one way to begin that trend, or changing those trends, is to look at what people want and what is succeeding. Where are the areas that young, educated people want to go? What kind of areas do they want to go to? How do you preserve property values over time? Because all your infrastructure, your businesses even too, to some extent, have a lifespan. As you can see from the decay of the inner ring suburbs, and we're in the sprawl moving out to move away from those decaying towns and municipalities. And what preserves property values as time sets in? Well, the answer, of course, is green space. Places like Bay Village have the lake, they have the parks, that are always going to be there. They're always going to lure people back to rebuild those homes and reinvigorate the community. And that's what young, educated people are looking for. Look at Chattanooga and Pittsburgh. They moved from the old model of heavy industrial sort of a construction, a development scheme, to turning that around and saying, what kind of resources do we have that make this place unique, and how can we turn that into an asset and build around it and create interest for people to come and live. And those are the kinds of things that I think that planners should be looking at, is this long-term use. Looking at what we got and saying, how is this unique from what Cleveland has, or other places that have their own advantages. They're central, they've got lots of infrastructure there already, and so on. But we have unique things too. We are rural. We have a rural flavor, but that can be a good thing. That can be something that we build around, that we showcase, that attracts people.